Now, we're going to take a trip back a few years on this one. We had to dig deep into the whiskey archives and all that jazz, and the information was a touch light on the ground, you could say. An absolute classic that is still regarded as an absolutely brilliant Irish whiskey. Let's drink some rare Irish whiskies. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Rare Whiskey Wednesdays. I'm the Whiskey Chaser Brian here in Christy's bar, Kilkenny. I hope you're keeping fantastic. So today I wanted to do something a little bit different. Still rare, obviously, and staying with the channel, but throw it back a few years. Not something that's a brand new release and limited bottling and all that kind of stuff that's just come out. Although this is really limited, you can still find it in auctions and some auctions from time to time. Maybe not this exact bottling, but the regular special reserve. Anyway, more on that in a minute. But this is the Powers Gold Label 12-year-old Special Reserve Millennium Edition. That's a mouthful. Now, quite obviously, and one that stands out, as the name suggests, this is a Powers Irish whiskey. This is a gold label release that is not like the standard release. This is aged for a minimum of, you guessed it, 12 years. And this bottle here was released to celebrate the millennium. This is a blended whiskey. However, this has a very high triple distilled pot still content of about 80%. The rest is grain whiskey. Now, I have heard varying reports of just how much pot still whiskey is in here. Some say as low as 70%, some say as high as 90%. We shall go right up the middle, and we're going to say 80%. Primarily refilled bourbon casks are used in the aging of this whiskey. However, I have come to learn in recent days that there was a small amount of refill sherry casks used here also. And astonishingly enough, there is whiskey in this blend between the ages of 19 to 21 years old. Serious hooch. I was also informed later on that first, second, and third fill bourbon grain in this, along with first and second fill pure pot still and sherry pot still whiskeys. So one could almost say this is a hell of a blend. So a commemorative bottling released for the Millennium, long since sold out. Even the special reserve version of this has long been discontinued. This, if you can find it online at an auction, is roughly priced anywhere between saying 200 euros to 400, 500 euros ish. Originally, this was launched as a special one-off in 2000 to commemorate the millennium. Like I said, it very quickly made its mark with whiskey lovers and remained in production due to its popularity, and only in the last couple of years was continued, like I mentioned. It's rare enough to see the Millennium Edition open in a bar, but it's here, it's the bars, and as you can see, it is very much open and ready for consumption. Now, I did do some research. The non-millennium version of this won a double gold at the 2011 San Francisco World Spirits Competition and a silver at the 2010 International Spirits Challenge. Let's get it in the glass. Have a little taste. We pour. Nice. Now, I've never had this before myself. This is kind of my first time, but I'm guessing the techniques used to distill the spirit in this have somewhat changed over the years. In the new Powers kind of whiskeys, there might be a slight difference in that, albeit only very slightly. Don't know what to expect here, but at 40%, I'm guessing it's quite light. Powers was or is the best-selling Irish whiskey in Ireland. They are renowned for a distillate-forward type of whiskey. Perfect for me. First fill and refill bourbon and sherry used here, as well as whiskeys as old as up to 21 years of age. Some say 24 as well. High pot still content of about 80% roughly. The rest being made up with grain. So yeah, let's do some tasting notes. So straight away, after letting this breathe for a few moments, you get that undeniable Powers nose. Yeah, so you know it's a Powers whiskey. Reminds me of the John's Lane to a touch, with that real heavy kind of bourbon influence coming through on it. Also, right, so the distillate style used here is different than, would say, the Green Spot and the Redbreast and the Jameson distillate style. That is, I don't know, I can't remember off the top of my head what the code was in Middleton that they use, but it's an obvious Powers whiskey is what I'm trying to know, or trying to say. Anyone who's had kind of the Three Swallows, the John's Lane, the Special Reserve, the regular gold blend even. So you're starting with that straight off. Now, it is quite soft. There is a bit of fruitiness to it. It is on the honeyed side, that kind of sweetness. Bourbon notes forward. It is quite an elegant whiskey. There's even a touch of like a lemon zest fruitiness to it, along with some grainy kind of notes in it, right? So that's the distillate forward style that I was kind of talking about, a little bit of the grainy notes coming through. Light on the pot still spices, but they are there. It's on the thicker side of things as well. So it's not like a thin whiskey on the nose. Getting a little bit of oiliness kind of coming through, that little bit of viscosity, that kind of little bit of bite to it, which I love, absolutely love. Touch of nuttiness as well. Very, 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 very slight kind of almondy, kind of even a hint of, very slight hint of orchard or dark fruits, like the, you know, kind of raisins and stuff like that, but very, 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 very slight. Powers all day long, baby. 40% ABV. All right, let's have a little sup. Let's launch it. Sweet. Kind of honey sweetness is coming through. Not a lot of spice, so it's quite approachable. Vanilla, fruity. Although the fruits is a little bit subdued, you're kind of getting more of those vanillas and honey notes coming through. The bourbon notes are definitely coming through. Quite oily, like the nose had suggested. The pot still spices are there, but they're only waving at you from afar. It's not quite in your face. Lemon zest, like I mentioned, on the nose, a little bit there, although it's quite subdued. Another little sup, slancha. I'm getting sherry notes coming through, the bourbon coming through a little. Like the nose suggests, a hint, sprinkling, dusting of sherry notes on the palate. That kind of nuttiness. Not so much the kind of raisins that I gotten on the nose, but like definitely a nuttiness intertwined with the kind of bourbon note there as well. So really, like I said, you have the sweet honey notes, a little bit of lemon zest or a tropical fruity note to it. It's oily, it's elegant, it's not in your face. It is quite a nice drinker. I would imagine this will open up absolutely beautifully if you sit there for the evening and have a couple of glasses of it. The bourbon is there on the palate. A little bit of the sherry nuttiness, not overly crazy or, you know, out of whack or something that's like, oh, that's a sherry whiskey. It's actually quite nice. The distillate is speaking here, and the good bourbon casks and the loveliness that comes with that. On the finish, that lemon zest does stick around a bit, and the fruity notes still kind of still there. A little bit of kind of grainy notes still there. A little bit of heat still there, even though there wasn't that much initial heat on the palate. Let's just finish this off. Why not? Slancha. Your bourbon notes on the finish. Touch of tanginess. Touch of tanginess, nothing crazy. Plenty of bite. Little bit of spice, the lemon zest and the fruit notes, kind of vanillas sitting on the palate, oily. So yeah, like the nose suggests, translates through from start, the nose, palate, the middle, and the finish. It's a nicely balanced whiskey, I would think, personally. Look, for how old this is or when it was released, I think this is a killer whiskey. Really nicely done, and give it a chance to open up, and it's a beautiful whiskey. I'd like to sit there with it all evening. But it is nice to be able to try, considering the, you know, these bottlings are like hen's teeth and they command a hefty secondary market value. Again, look, it's here, it's open, it's for sale. I'm not sure how much a bottle or a dram, but yeah, a nice little dram. And I guess you could go as far to say it's kind of like tasting a bit of history, even if it's a fairly new-ish history. Well, I suppose not really. I guess, you know, for the Millennium Edition, it would have had whiskeys in it going back as far as the early 80s. Maybe even the late 70s. So yeah, I suppose it is a history lesson. If you can, get your hands on it because it's rare. Speaking of rare, that's it for this Rare Whiskey Wednesday. Another one in the bag. Make sure you're subscribed and all that good stuff. Like this video if you did like it and share it around. People might know. You might have a bottle. Open it, try it. Why not? Until next week, keep it Irish. flog it.